Recording in progress.
And see how the rabbi's doing. So, yeah.
Okay, hi everybody. Hope we're
Shalom, Rabbi. Glad to be with you. I'm going to just give you full screen and
okay.
You're live, Rabbi.
Can you take my picture off of your screen though? Yeah, great. Awesome. Yep. All right, hi everybody. How are we doing? Doing well? Good. So I want to I'm going to say again a little, as we've been doing, I say a short idea, and then we'll talk about that, anything else you want to talk about. So I want to just give a little bit of a discussion about one of the 7 Noachide laws, which seems obvious, but in this current state that's going on in America and in the world, I think we need to reiterate this. And realize the flaws of what's going on. There's one of the seven Noachide commandments, seems fairly obvious. The idea of don't steal seems fairly obvious. Yeah, of course, it seems. But there is right now in America another pandemic, which is the theft pandemic. You know, break and what do they call it? Break and grab. I forgot they have the terms for it. People are stealing left and right. And I want to sort of get into the flaw of the understanding that is the root of theft. And God willing, if we understand this, this will give a deeper understanding to what we have to do in respecting other people's boundaries. So let's understand something. When you read the story in the Torah, the story of Joseph. So what's the story? Joseph is 17 years old. He's sold into slavery into Egypt, as you read the story there. And it says that the wife of his master was trying to seduce him. The wife of Potiphar, day in and day out, she was trying to seduce him. The Talmud records she changed her clothes multiple times every day, did everything she can. Apparently she was beautiful and she was trying to seduce him. He's 17 years old. And he's lost in the world of slavery. The world of slavery is a world where it's such a negative space. We talked about it a little bit. We talk about Passover, but the Talmud says that a slave starts to like things being what's called hefker. They become wild and lewd because they don't have a sense, the slave, of this is mine. I work to make this. Because one of the terrible things about slavery is the lack of ownership of what's yours. So he's like in the slave world, and now his master she's trying to seduce him day in, day out. He's 17 years old. And now he has to resist. Now, if you look at the words in the text, it's very strange. Because you would think he would say, it's not right. You know, I'm a religious person. It's adultery. It's terrible. That's what I would think he would say. But if you look at the words, he didn't say that. He said, listen, the master of this house entrusted me with everything. Okay, I'm in charge. He trusts me with everything. No one in this house runs things more and has the trust more and access to all of his possessions other than me, except for you, as you are his wife. Now, when you hear him saying that, it kind of sounds like he's talking about, like, you know, not this illicit relation problem, which it would have obviously been, but he's saying, listen, I can't do it because there are things that are mine, things that are not mine. And he trusted me. And how could I do this terrible thing of to go and to take you where you've not been given to me. What is he saying? What's Yosef understanding? And this is what part I want us to hear. Yosef saw the world in the way it really is. And that is the idea that everyone has what is theirs and it belongs to them. You do not want something that belongs to someone else because it's not you. Let me explain this. There was a great rabbi named Pinchas ben Yair, and he had a donkey. And it says they gave his donkey once food that was not tithed. The donkey wouldn't eat it. How's that possible? A very smart donkey. Donkey knew what was he could eat and what he can't eat. No, the answer was the donkey was an extension of this great rabbi. It was his property. And therefore, the donkey actually functioned in this higher way because he was owned by this great sage. The property that you have and you have been given are things that are meant for you. And what's not meant for you is not yours. You have no connection to it. Yosef was saying to her, I can't even see you. You're not my world. If a man's wife is his wife, it's his wife. It's to her husband. What does that have to do with me? If you own something, that's yours. That's your part. If a person goes and acquires something inappropriately, illegally, it's not just that they're doing this terrible act of stealing. They're destroying the proper boundaries of the world. What if I would take something unjustly? It doesn't only mean that the thing that I have I don't own. It means everything I have is not really mine, because the things that I'm supposed to own are supposed to be what I have earned, what I have been given, what God says is for me, and what you have is supposed to be yours. And when you break that boundary, the whole thing falls apart. That's why it says there are different kinds of people. And there's 4 kinds of people, it says. There are those that say, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. And that, the sages say, is an evil person, because his eye looks and says, everything I'm trying to subsume into myself. That person's evil. There's a high level, the righteous person, that what you do, the person says, listen, what's yours is yours. And what's mine, I look to share with you. Not that you take it, but I look to give, because it's crucial. One of the switches in life is to try to change. We're all naturally takers. We take. That's what we do. When we're babies, when the baby is, 1 day old, it doesn't say, oh, my mother is tired, maybe I shouldn't cry now, because we are born to this world as takers. We want to nurse, The job in life is to become a giver. That's why in Hebrew, the word giving is the same word as ahava, as love. Yahiv is to give, hav is to give. Same word as to love. Why is that? Because we make a mistake. We think the people that I love is what I get. That's our natural state. The deeper meaning is that as I give to someone, I invest in someone, I love them more. That's why the child that you're working with, and it's so difficult, at a certain point you feel tremendous love because you've taken yourself and invested it in the other person. So there are those that all want to take what they get from you. There are those that say, listen, you have yours. I don't want to take your thing. It belongs to you. But I want to find a way that mine can be yours too, and I can give you. Those are 2. Now, there's 2 other types of people. This one's a very tricky one. This one is a little bit like in America today. It says, mine is mine and yours is yours. Now, what is that? Is that a good person or a bad person? So the conclusion is that person is 2 different explanations. One is called he's an average person because he doesn't take what doesn't belong to them. Yours is yours, mine is mine. Another explanation is this is called the trait of Sodom. Because you still, if you're so separate from other people that theirs is theirs and yours is yours, it's good you have boundaries. But if you're not trying to help people at all, that could be a very dangerous quality. And then there's the 4th category of people that say, What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Now, what do you call that? That's the big movement today in the world. And that's the root of the theft problem that's happening in America. Because it's not really yours, it belongs to everyone. It belongs to, okay. It's not really, you don't really own it. So yours is mine, mine's yours. What is that called? The Talmud says that's called an ignoramus, a fool. A person that doesn't understand the boundaries. Once I break the boundaries and what's yours is not yours, then what's mine is not mine either anymore. And that's why the idea of theft doesn't mean don't go rob a bank. Of course not. But it means to understand that another person has their value. They are a separate entity from you, and you must respect that and everything that's in their orbit, because the things you own are really meant for you. God is giving you things in the world to accomplish with what he's giving you. It's not random. If you have something, this means this is relevant to who you are as a person and what you need to accomplish, both in terms of your body, your qualities, and in terms of your possession. And therefore, the commandment not to steal is not just a question of doing a terrible act of theft. It's an encroachment on another person's space in any way that you don't recognize and respect that theirs is theirs and it's not you. People want to just expand themselves. I want every. That's not what it is. There's another person. And once I respect what is theirs is really theirs, and like Joseph says, how could it be relevant to me? Joseph did not have a desire for another man's wife, not only because he controlled himself in the illicit relations area, which he did, but it was not his world. How could it be? It's not mine. It's not for me. And that is a crucial understanding, because the world can't function according to the system that's being propagated in the world right now. Right now, they're trying to break the boundaries here, which is, they call it socialism, whatever they call it. It's breaking boundaries. And when you break those boundaries, what you own is not yours either anymore, because everything has that taste of no guidelines towards who it is. It's a crucial fundamental. That's why this is one of the 7 no-chai laws. A crucial way the society can function, not just not to steal, but not to encroach in any way on someone else's situation. Don't cut the line, because you realize the other person, his time is valuable, her time is valuable. And if you don't care about that, then you're disregarding their place in the world, and then there's no place in the world for anybody. So when we respect it and we honor it and we give people theirs and say, this is yours, not mine, then the world becomes a place where everyone can now say, this is relevant to me. And then there's ability to go and to give, because we own what is ours and others own what is theirs. And then we can have a real connection to someone else and build something together, because everyone is in their proper world and they understand the value of what they have and what the other has. Okay, that's my idea on the problem going on in America, what the root of it is, and the Noachide commandment of being very, very careful not to transgress boundaries of things that are not meant for us. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions.
Wow, Rabbi, that is quite profound.
Or anything else that we'd like.
Oh, thank you so much, Rabbi. That is quite profound. I can relate to it in my job, and it's definitely exciting. So, folks, we're now opening it up to Q&A. So, if anybody on the No-High World Center Facebook pages or YouTube have a question for the Rabbi, it doesn't have to be on the topic he just discussed, but it could be. If you've got a question that you're looking for an answer from a learned Rabbi, Rabbi Ingber is highly recommended by the Noahide World Center, and he's a retired rabbi from Atlanta, Georgia. So we're just honored to have time with him and to have him open his years of experience to those that may have questions. So if you got any questions, type them in the chat room. If anybody on the Netiv Zoom room has a question, put up the hand, and I'll try and flag it to the rabbi.
Okay.
Anybody?
Rabbi, just a comment. You reminded me in your lecture on stealing. A few years ago, Rod was leading a study on the path of the just, and we were talking about stealing, and we got into the depth of there are things we don't even think about stealing, but they are. And the example that really impressed me was if I'm out running errands and I go to a strip shopping center and I park in front of the dry cleaners because I've got business there. I run in and do my business with him. Then several doors down, I need to go to the jewelry store and do something. I need to move my car away from the dry cleaners. Otherwise, I could be stealing space from other customers that want to come to that establishment. And we looked at things that could be stealing that never would have occurred to me.
Wow.
So it's an interesting question. Yes, because stealing in general, it's like I say, it's that's why I wanted to give the idea and the boundaries, because it's much more than obviously running into a bank and robbing a bank. In this case, though, I'm not sure about the dry cleaner question, because it hinges on something else, which is what is the understanding of the normal way that things function. So, for example, if it's a parking lot in a mall and it's acceptable, you could do that, and that's the understood mode of functioning, then it wouldn't be stealing. So it depends on certain characteristics and certain definitions. If it's something that, this is the normal way that people function, they go and they park and they do other things, then we could say that it's understood. Because obviously, if you think about, if you would make that stealing, could be a person won't even go buy and use the dry cleaners because it's not worth it for them. They'll push off using it. They'll say, I'll go to another dry cleaner where I don't have this problem. So I'm not sure in that case if it would be stealing. One of the factors you have to always look at is what is the assumption of the people in this normal situation. So, very often you'll have a case where this is the normal way to act, and
like a strip mall parking lot would be for that entire strip mall, you'd think.
Right. Generally speaking, it would be. So I don't know in that case, in the case that Sandy's saying, I don't know exactly, but I'm saying you have to know if the strip mall, that's the way they function, then you don't have to move the car. If they're saying, hey, we only let people here coming here and only to this, then maybe not. But you have to. I don't know if that case would actually be stealing. I think that probably wouldn't. I don't know the case exactly.
If you were in a handicap spot, that would be for sure.
Yeah, that's a different question. Here the question is what is the assumption? What is the normal method of doing it? If the accepted method of it is people allowed to park anywhere there, or even if they use this place is used for customers and they allow them, then it's okay. If not, then not. So even in your case, Sandy, where if the case would be you're allowed to go in, and let's say the parking spot is only for customers here.
Right.
That's the question now. So what would happen if you want to do that and use it someplace else? That would be dependent a little bit on what is the normal understanding. Is the establishment you're saying that you have to use us and only us and nothing else? Then that's their right if it's their parking spot.
Yeah, and
then
they
you have to move.
Sure.
If it's not, if the understanding is that we want you to use it for us, but we allow you to go, and it's normal people to go do one thing and other ones, then you wouldn't have to. So they have to clarify what the normal accepted reality.
I know in our area, a lot of the spaces would be these 3-4 spaces are reserved for this business.
Right.
And then the next one would be reserved. This would be more like when you're parking right in front of the establishment. Yeah, the general parking lot that was not what was the issue. Is if it's
Right.
reserved for that cleaners, and I shouldn't park there if I'm not doing business with that cleaners.
Right. So what I would do, if you want to be careful, is go to the people, not cleaners, and say, listen, it's okay when I park here and I use the cleaner. If I want to use other errands there, is that okay with you? And you'll get an answer, which is they'll probably say, yeah, so because you're already using us. So I hear your question. Your question is if it's specifically set for them. All I'm adding is that there's still a normal expected thing that people do expect, and then that wouldn't cross the line. You just have to establish what is the understood intention of the people.
Rabbi, we got a couple of hands up in the group. Larry Allen in Kentucky was up first. If you want to mute your mic, Larry, and then Tar Rawls has got his hand up next.
Hey, Larry, how you doing?
How you doing, Rabbi?
Good, thank God.
I'm going to try to ask this question the best I can. It's not on the topic, but it's something I've been thinking about.
Good.
So it's established, we know that the Mashiach is coming out of the line of David, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, as far as Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews, that didn't come until later, right? That wasn't a thing in biblical time, in Torah times, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, my question is, are we going to know when we know who the Mashiach is, when he comes, are we going to know if he's Sephardi or Ashkenazi, or will that even matter? I guess that's what I'm asking. And how will we know? It'll just
right. So it's a good question. It's an interesting question. You're right. It's a good question, Larry, because when he comes, I guess today, since it's basically, you fit into one of the categories, so you probably would have to be one or the other, I assume. There are some other combinations. There's Taimani, which is from Yemen, and this and that. But I would guess, you probably would be born to someone who would have, a certain tradition. Now, let me explain the Ashkenazi Sephardi tradition a second to explain Larry's question a little deeper. So this is how this evolves. So you have the Jewish people are all in Israel. Now, in the first temple destruction, so the Jews were all exiled to Babylon, to Babylon. That's where they're exiled to, and they're all there. It's a 70-year exile. So they go from Babylon, Bavel, which is today modern day Iraq, and then they're back to the land of Israel. The second destruction of the second temple in the year 70 of the Common Era, so there the Jews spread out. They spread out to different places in the world. The Jews who are called Sephardic Jews are the ones who end up going to the areas with Sfarad is Spain, actually. And they drift to that area. And the ones that are called Ashkenaz was the Rhineland, Germany, France was considered there. So they went to different places. Now, these are the same Jews, but they developed certain variations in custom and some variation in law, but not in significant law. In other words, the book of Jewish law has both the Sephardi and Ashkenazi laws in there, but how we decide law, there was different rabbis, and let me explain how this works in general. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he also said the sages have to apply it. There's a very important point here to understand, and this is why there's some confusion about, let's say, in the Jewish world, there are sects of the Jewish world. There's there's the Orthodox, which we call is the tradition, it keeps the Torah, and then there's some other ones, conservative reform. We don't. What are those? So what happened was that Orthodox is not saying, oh, we are, we don't use electricity. We don't say we're doing what Moses did and what Abraham did, and there's no modern day inventions. We're not saying that. We're saying that God gave the whole system, and now we have to apply it. So, for example, there was no fire I mean, there's no electricity in time of Moses. There's no electricity. So how does a Jew know now he can't use electricity on the Sabbath? The answer is because we had the whole system and now we apply it. So when electricity was first discovered, there were thousands and thousands of pages of writings that came out analyzing and applying the law. And it was determined that the criterion of fire, which is forbidden on the Sabbath for a Jew to light a fire, would be constituted in the using of electricity. Different kinds of electricity, a light bulb, for example, the tungsten gets red hot, and we have the sources that God told us that red hot metal is considered to be a fire. So we apply the law. The Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews, as they migrated to different places, so their sages, their rabbis, had different discussions in applying various laws. So there are some variation in terms of tradition and some laws. Not obviously the big things like lighting fire on Shabbos, lighting electricity. Of course, everyone holds you can't do that. The Reform movement, you may have heard of, went to reform Judaism, so they went away from the complete system. So they're not considered to be a Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jew are all considered following the same law with some variation in application, but all in one system. The other sects that made up an idea of like, oh, we're not going to follow the system and make up their own rules, that's completely out. That's not part of the system we're talking about. But Ashkenazi and Sephardi are part of the same situation, but there are variations. So when Mashiach comes, will he be Ashkenazi or Sephardi? I don't know. Probably if you ask the Ashkenazi, they'll say the Ashkenazi. Yeah, Sephardi, so he'll be Sephardi probably. But either way, we don't have a problem with that because the law is the law and the truth is the truth. And it's interesting because and I don't know the answer to this question, Larry. It's a great question. When Mashiach comes, a lot of the laws that Ashkenaz and Sephardi do might not change because these are customs, and there's no reason to change your custom. It's not wrong. So you have certain various customs, they may not change. Now the Mashiach is going to be a great scholar, and there are in Jewish law certain points of Jewish law that we say Elijah the prophet, who's the herald's time of the Mashiach, he's going to clarify some debates that we have in the law. But whether he'll be an Ashkenazi Sephardi, I don't know. But either way, whether he's Ashkenazi and the Sephardi will be happy to see him, and if he's Sephardi, Ashkenazi will be happy to see him.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we had Tari had a question.
Okay, yes. I have a question on the Shemitah, the seventh year where we don't don't harvest our crops.
Right.
How does that apply to the non-agricultural world, to the industrial part? Whatever is that relevant to the non-industrial, the non-agricultural society?
Well, it's relevant maybe in one sense that there's another law called Shemitah Ksofim, which is, and let me explain the idea of Shemitah. This is specifically in Israel, and let me explain the idea a little bit because it's those who don't know, and I'll answer your question in a second, Tar. So the Shemitah is quite a fascinating, amazing law. Just like the Jews have to keep the Sabbath, the seventh day, there's no work. The seventh year of every system, there's no agricultural work. And this creates sort of a reset on a lot of levels, in terms of the land, in terms of people also, because as I said to you in the beginning of this class, we talked about boundaries. So, my field is my field. In the seventh year, it's everyone's. So it means the poor, people who own the land, don't own the land, it becomes everyone's land for 1 year. So that's the seventh year, and an amazing statement. The Torah says that God says, what you're going to ask, what am I going to do if I don't plant the land? How am I going to survive? This is an agricultural society. So God says, I will give you a bumper crop. And you'll get on the 6th year, enough for the 6th year, 7th year, and the beginning of the 8th year till you plant. And by the way, when the state of Israel was formed now, in 1948. So the chief rabbi at the time, Rabbi Cook, he wrote a response in what to do, because there was no food, there was a famine, it was very difficult, and he said if somebody, if they would sometimes let other people own the land, someone wasn't Jewish to own the land, and they worked the land. But Rav Kook said that if anyone is able to keep the laws of Shemitah like it says, they'll be fine, and he encouraged that. Today, many people in Israel keep the law of Shemitah. Years ago, I saw this incredible article. I wish I had it to show you. It was an article in the newspaper in Israel, this last Shemitah, of two kibbutzim, two farm areas in Israel, right next to each other. One was keeping Shemitah and one wasn't. And there was a picture, they're right next to each other. And what happened was the one that wasn't keeping Shemitah, these locusts came and just killed all the crop. And the one right next to it, which was growing fallow, everything was growing. It was the craziest picture to see, because you saw like, okay, so you have to have a little trust, and you trust in Hashem, you'll see what happens. So that is the laws of Shemitah. This year in Israel, it's Shemitah, and many, many people are keeping it and seeing incredible miracles that are happening right now. And I want you to understand what this means, because it's fascinating. We talked about like, the authenticity and accuracy of the Torah. If somebody was going to make up a religion, this is not something you would promise, because after the first Shemitah, when you didn't have food, that was the end. So the Jews who did this for a long period of time and saw it were successful. It's happening today also. So that's the law on agriculture. Now, what Tara is asking, is there any relevance to a non-agricultural society? And the answer is yes, because there's something called Shmitas Ksafim, which means debts. The person owes me money. A Jew who lends another Jew money, the seventh year will nullify the debt. It's sort of like a restructuring of the society. Now, it doesn't mean that every time a guy loses out, because there are systems on how to protect a debt. If a person takes it, they could take a collateral, they can have it set up in the court systems, various. But generally speaking, there is such a concept that if a person lends someone money and it wasn't established as a debt that the court owns to retrieve it, or through collateral, then the Shemitah year would absolve that and help the person get back on his feet. Because there's no bankruptcy laws in the Torah. Because bankruptcy is a funny thing, because if I owe someone money, I say bankrupt, and I protect myself, and then the people lose out their money. There's no such thing in Jewish law. Someone owes somebody money, and then they close their business, they still owe the money. I gotta find a way to pay it. But Shemitah has another way to help people restart by allowing their debts to be forgiven, and that's even done today. Good question, Tara.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Rabbi. On that same
Good.
note about the
other questions we got.
Rabbi, about the Shemitah year, I've got Lara down in Tampa.
Shemitah year, I was going to be in Israel. I didn't work out this, but the greatest thing in Shemitah is also the fruits have holiness. Yeah, you can't waste them. I remember one year I had Shemitah wine and it spilt on the table, and we had like a plastic cloth. And I said, "What are we gonna do?" I took a straw and I drank it, so I wouldn't waste. And I'll tell you a story while guys get questions together. It's an amazing story. There was a guy in Israel in Shemitah year, and what happened was he had a cleaning lady from a different country. She was from, I don't know where, like an Eastern European country, and they were in Israel. And she was working in this rabbi's house during the Shemitah year. And what happened was the rabbi had these two oranges that he had in the refrigerator, and they were Shemitah oranges. And he came home and he said to his wife, "Where are the oranges?" And she said, what the regular oranges? I don't know. I gave them to the cleaning lady. So I said, those are holiness. What do you mean? You should smell the Shemitah. You can't throw it away. You have to eat the whole thing. So what happened was, she said, I didn't know. I thought it was regular oranges. I gave it to her and she's gone. So this rabbi started freaking out, started running. Where is she? Where's she going? And he went and he chased her, and he was running, trying to find this cleaning lady. And he ran and he found her on the bus going back to her house. And he comes on the bus and he's like sweating. And he runs over and says, "Where is it? Where is it?" And this cleaning lady didn't know, but she had just stolen money and jewelry from the house, and she was about to leave the country.
Oh my.
And the rabbi's, "Where is it?" And she got pale. I said, I'm sorry. And she took out these jewels that she just stole. And the rabbi says, "No, I want the oranges." He took the jewels though too.
Rabbi, on the Shemitah year, I've got Lara down in Tampa asking a question. It's kind of a curveball. She asks, is it okay on a Shemitah year to buy a potted plant and dig a hole in the ground and put it in there since it's already actually cultivated or planted? Or is that crossing the line?
It's very good question. It's a whole discussion in the law. Again, this is only in the land of Israel. So in the land of Israel, even a plant, it's a discussion about the plant, if it has a hole in it or not, but a plant with a hole in it for sure, somehow there is some connection to the ground, and you can't even grow in a potted plant with a hole in it. You can't even grow that out of the ground in Israel. So there's different questions if it's totally closed or not. It's a great question, Lara. So yeah, there is a whole discussion of it, and there's a lot of different parameters to it. But yes, but in Israel, even today, which is Shemitah year, to grow food in a potted plant is problematic, and there's different discussions and different opinions about. But as there's no hole, but there's a hole, there's a problem. So yes, it's not a wrong question. It's a right question. It's a major discussion about the laws of Shemitah, how to do it. Good question, Lara. Good. Okay, what else we got? What other ideas? Shemitah, interesting. Yeah, George, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time and a good explanation on Joseph. And I've never thought about that way of stealing. So for the one of us who are not born Jews, how come we have that? How come we want to learn, and how come we want to study? Is it considered as stealing the learning, or the you see what I mean?
Oh, very, very interesting. I think I understand what you mean, and it's true. It's a bit of a difficult thing for me to figure out exactly what, where, and how. That's why the idea is to teach people what is relevant to everybody. So that's why, like, I spoke specifically about, stealing, which is one of the 7 Noachide laws. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, George. It's a very good question, and that's why many rabbis are hesitant, and I try to figure out myself what exactly you can say. There are certain things that may be intricacies and different ideas for Jewish law that might not be relevant, and that might be crossing a line. So you are bringing actually a correct concept that a person who would say, well, I want to know what is relevant to someone else, not to me, that may be crossing a line. It's a very, very good point, and there's accuracy to it also. That's why I'm trying to do. There's so much stuff that people here on this channel right now want to know because it is relevant to you, and I'm trying to hone in the parts that are relevant that sit with a person. Let me explain just a second the idea of the 613 commandments and the seven commandments. and this is really something that you all know, you probably have heard, but the Talmud says that a Noachide that learns the 7 commandments is like the high priest of Israel. What does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, the high priest of Israel, I'm not the high priest of Israel. The high priest of Israel is the highest soul. What does that mean? What it means is that everyone has to go and understand what they need to do in life. When you have a garden, you go in the garden, you don't treat everything the same. This needs water once a day. This is once a week. This is once every 2 weeks. This is a cactus that needs once a month. So everything needs to get what it's relevant to them to be able to grow. And that's the same thing with the commandments. There are commandments that the Jews must do, and if they don't do it, they're not gonna be whole. And that's unfortunate. Like, unfortunately, I have to say, and the Jews that don't keep the commandments, they can end up having philosophies and ideas that are very counter to what Judaism says, because they're not getting the nourishment that they need, and they're looking for something else. And Noachide also has certain nourishment, and the knowledge that we want to try to share is knowledge that is universal to everyone here in this channel, and things that are wisdoms and ideas that will nourish you because they are relevant to you. And that's called the Torah's 7 mitzvahs. It's called the understanding of the 7 Noachide laws, which is much greater than just the short list. So we're trying to expand to give you the things that are relevant. That's why specifically I want to talk about today, because yes, to tell you the law of stealing, that's very nice. I could say we can learn these details. I want to give you the philosophy of it, because that's also relevant, because I see in America, I see right now, it's crazy what's going on. And really it's inspired by a certain hatred of, like, these people shouldn't have and you should have. It's a blurring of boundaries. And so we need to understand and respect the boundaries properly, and then we could understand the commandment and how important it is for each one of us, for Jews and for non-Jews alike. Okay.
Is there a difference between the stealing in the 7 Noachid laws and stealing, which means kidnapping, in the 10 Commandments?
Yeah.
Is there an explanation for why?
Well, yes, stealing in the 10 Commandments is actually called kidnapping. It's stealing a person, and stealing in this week's Torah portion and other places is not stealing money. Between 10 Commandments, yes, it's again, just to clarify, the 10 Commandments, we said it before, but the 10 Commandments is a misnomer. There's actually 14 commandments in the 10 Commandments. It's not really 10 Commandments. If you count, the second commandment has numerous commandments to it. It has not to make idols, not to bow down. It has different parts to it. So it's called in Hebrew, Aseres Adibros, 10 statements. And they're 10 concepts that are the principles that all of the 30 commandments come out from. So the idea of stealing in the 10 Commandments is referring to kidnapping, but that has a corollary of stealing items also. Obviously, stealing people is, like probably the most gregarious way of doing stealing, but stealing items is an extension of that. Now, there are also differences in laws between Noachides and Jews in terms of the stealing exactly. So we need to go through that, and we could have a halachic series to go through the halachas, but there's even differences because stealing itself, the laws of guarding boundaries are very, very complicated and very, very lengthy, and there are some differences between Jews and Noachides in this area. There are some differences, so you have to learn each one separately. Good Italian. Good question.
Rabbi, Lara's asking again, she's asking if you know which tractate in the Talmud does it say about a Noahide who studies the 7 laws is considered like the high priest? She's saying it's very important to a Turkish Noahide community.
It's in Tractate Avodah Zarah. I believe page 7. I believe I could double check. I think it's in Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 7. I believe, but I will try to double check that. I'll do it while we're talking.
Okay, I do have a question from the Alps from Ernesto, and Ernesto's asking, he says, I'm 68 and since 1994 thinking like a Noahide. Is it possible to study 3 months Ivrit, Hebrew? He says, men 1954 Noahide off in front of my friend Rabbi Chaim Goldberg. I'm not, I can't, I'm just trying to read it verbatim. Is it possible to study Hebrew for 3 months?
Can you learn Hebrew in 3 months? So, it depends on a person's skills and qualities. The Hebrew language itself, there's two parts to the Hebrew language. Let me explain it like that. On one level, it's easier than English because English doesn't make any sense. You lagach. I mean, why is laugh? GH. The English language is not a phonetic language. It's because it's a combination of German and French and all these different things. So, reading English is difficult. The way you read English is not phonetically. You have to recognize the words. Hebrew is obviously phonetic. And Hebrew, the words are it's beyond fascinating because the world was created with the Hebrew language, the holy language, not modern Hebrew, which is a variation, but the holy language, the biblical Hebrew, the whole world was created with that. So I could show you I could show you in the words themselves, they if you flip the letters around, it'll say the opposite of the word. It's fascinating because every single letter, I have series on this. This is the most fascinating things to the Hebrew language. The depth of it is beyond, it's infinite. So it's very concise also. There's less words because the words have specific meanings and variations to it. So in one way, it's easier. One way it's easier. Now, but the other thing is that it says that Pharaoh knew 70 languages, which was a requirement, but he couldn't speak Hebrew. I couldn't speak Hebrew because a person needs a blessing to be able to get it. It's a holy language, and it doesn't always go by how just smart somebody is, but it needs a certain blessing. So the answer is, in terms of learning the Hebrew, it has a certain area where it's easier, and if a person applies themselves, they can get it. But like everything else, but even more so, you need a blessing to be able to really to get it, a certain aspect of holiness in the Hebrew language to understand it. Now, modern Hebrew is not the holy language. Modern Hebrew has many words that are based in Hebrew, but it's not the holy language. And one of the reasons it's not the holy language is because modern Hebrew has words for certain negative concepts that we don't have in Hebrew, and they had to borrow those from other languages. So modern Hebrew is not specifically, it overlaps, and people who speak modern Hebrew can learn Torah Hebrew easier, but there's many words that modern Hebrew either got wrong or they had to import from other languages because they weren't part of the holy language. I see someone posted here. Ross, did you find the source? You posted it? Okay. All right, good. We have another questions. Any other questions, ideas, comments? Larry, your hand's up. I don't know if it's the old question or a new question.
It's a new question.
Good, please.
I won't go away, Rabbi. Another question for you I've been thinking about.
Sure.
As far as I know that it's in the Torah, it's a mitzvah for Jewish couples to have kids, correct? At least two?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, as far as a Noahide, I know that a Noahide must marry, another Gentile. I know that. But how is it looked at as say if I were to meet
So, I mean, again, Noachides should have children too. Now, waiting is a specific question on how to do it, and there are different aspects of birth control. Some are more problematic than others. So I can't answer that in this format. It's a more specific question. We could talk about it privately. The pill is the least problematic because it's just preventing. It's not necessarily destroying the seed. So there are ways, and so as far as for Noachai, they should have children too. Should try to have children. We talked about before, Larry. We gotta get you married, and hope soon. It's important to try to have children. But there are probably ways to do it. We could talk about it privately. Just email me of how to possibly do it, which is the best way if a person is married and they want to prevent it. Generally speaking, birth control is the least problematic. The other ones that are more problematic. So as far as Jews, yes, it's a mitzvah to have 2 children. For Noachites also, there's different opinions that it's still a mitzvah peruvu to have children, and so it's highly recommended. And it doesn't mean that they can't, protect how. There's not the question of abortion. That's a different question altogether. But different methods of preventing is some are better than others.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Rav.
It's a good question. Again, for Jews, it's you're supposed to have at least 1 boy, 1 girl. But for Noachites, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a source for it, but I would think it's probably similar, because the opinions that hold Noachites should have children also, because the world was created to be established, probably would be a boy and a girl. I have to double check that.
Is it in the logical laws for Noachites?
So there are different opinions about that, but I don't know if it's called a logical law. It could be. It is. There's a verse that says, "Lo tov bar l'sheves yatzro." God did not create the world to be abandoned. He created it to be established. So the logic would be that should be for everyone. So I think that's why some opinions would say it's a Noachide law too, because it makes sense. When you have children, you would have the world needs to keep going. It needs to expand. Great, very good. Great. Any other questions? We got time for one more. Okay. I'll circle back to what I said originally, and then someone have a question?
Yes, I do.
Oh yeah, please tell us.
It's about kneeling.
What?
I think kneeling when you pray.
Oh.
Like I heard that. I read King Solomon could kneel. Like a king can kneel when praying, but the rest of the people should not kneel. And what about in your private life, in private, when nobody's seeing you? Can you do whatever you want to do? Not just kneeling, because you see in the Torah throwing yourself falling on your face and stuff like that before the Lord and stuff like that.
So there are different things about that. There's 2 different laws here. One law is kneeling on a stone floor outside the temple. And I gotta be honest, I have to check this is for Noachites also. For Jews, I know Jews cannot, when they go down, which we today only do on Yom Kippur generally, they go down on the floor. That is not supposed to do it outside the temple. So we do that. The Jews will do that on Yom Kippur, but they'll put it says not to go down on a stone floor because that's reserved for the temple. In times of temple, people used to do that. I'm not positive about for Noachides, but I would assume that, you know, if they put you know, a piece of paper or a cloth or a towel, that it probably shouldn't be any different, because even a Jew, the problem is to go down, kneel outside the temple on the stone floor. So I would assume it shouldn't be different for Noachides. I could double check, but I assume it should be different. What the second thing you're referring to is when you pray. So it says that the king bows down and he stays down. That's talking about not the kneeling. Kneeling is an issue of the temple, but when a person prays, we bow down and we get up. Bow down and get up. The king, when he prays, he begins his prayer, he bows and he stays bent the whole time. And that's a special law because the king needs to go and to get humility. The king has a problem. He's the king, you know, and you, unfortunately, if you read any history, you realize how bad kings were, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the Jewish king, whose job was to be a conduit for God in the world, he had to have tremendous humility. That's why he had to carry a Torah with him wherever he went. And that's why he has a special law when he would bend down in prayer. When we bend down in prayer, and then we get up, we say in God's name, we rise up, then God raises us up. He would stay down. He would bend and he would stay down because he had a new law of humility. So it's two different things. One thing is the king has a different way to pray than everyone else, needing to guard himself to have humility, and therefore the law is for him in his regular prayers, he stays bent. The second law is the law of kneeling, of going down on the ground, either knees or face down. So that is forbidden to do on a stone floor outside of the temple. The temple in Jerusalem, that's where we could do it. So we don't do it outside of that. If we do it outside of that, we put something underneath it. That's for Jews. I don't see why Noachides would be different. I'll double check, but I don't see why if you put a cloth there, I don't see why it should be different.
Rabbi, one last question.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave Tuttle's asking, he says, the Rambam wrote that it is the death penalty for non-Jews to study Torah. He's heard various interpretations and just wanted to know your thoughts on that point.
So this is what George was asking for also, and I was referring to, because it's a tricky thing, and I myself, you know, try to look at it and see, because it's tricky. To teach things that are not relevant is not appropriate, and that's what it's referring to. So we're trying to teach all the things that are relevant, and to fill in, as we said before in the Talmud, the idea that a Noachide is learning things that are relevant to them and thereby enhancing their spiritual growth. That's good. To learn things that are outside. Now, some people say that's talking about Talmud. Now, what is called Talmud is certain things that everyone knows, is not. So there's certain things that are considered to be outside of the spectrum, and those are the things that we have to avoid. And as we said earlier, which was really George's question, in a certain sense, it's like stealing. Yes, if a person takes something that's meant for someone else, that's why Noachides, although they can keep Shabbos in the sense of commemorative in some way, but the laws of Shabbat, like that's not really relevant. Some people say also, you know, because the idea of Shabbat is a day where you don't produce, but you know, Noachide is supposed to produce, and producing the whole week long is appropriate. So there's certain things that may not be relevant to the person, and that crosses the line. So exactly the point we said before, learning Torah that has a connection to you and that will help you grow spiritually and keep the mitzvot properly and become that elevated human being that you can become is a great mitzvah to do. So the Talmud that you're referring to is referring to things that are not relevant. Some people say that's considered the Talmud or the oral Torah or various questions of what that is, but those things we try to avoid. Okay, I think I had a question here from last one I have from Raven. Let me just pull the last question up from Raven. Want to read it to me, Dan?
Yeah, she says, Rabbi, I know you mentioned that is a requirement that Jews have 2 children. What is the reason that all of the matriarchs were barren at the beginning? I know that we have discussed how the patriarchs all had specific tests to improve their traits, like Abraham was because of cursed and Isaac limitation, etc. Why did the matriarchs have the same challenge? And is there a way we see how their amuna actually increases because of being barren?
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned that in a class here a number of weeks ago on prayer. There's different answers for that question. One answer is that God wanted their hearts in the prayer. And one answer, that's a famous question, because if the Jewish nation was supposed to come, so why were they barren? It's like that's counterintuitive. So the answer is that they elevated themselves completely to a different level through prayer. And it's a tremendous lesson for us, because sometimes we might think, oh, why didn't I have this thing, and feel bad about it, when it may be the opportunity to transform ourselves. So the matriarchs, and I'll just add to one, I see a few, so I'll add to this point, Raven, for what you're asking. There's different qualities that men have and women have. The Talmud says women have a greater quality of chukka, of yearning. And the female quality of the yearning, and they wanted to have children, and how they therefore prayed and they connected to God through their yearning to do this great thing, was so amazing that it was transformative to them in terms of their relationship with Hashem and to establishing the entire world, really. So yeah, the answer is that they were held, one answer is they were held back because God wanted, it says he wants to hear the prayers of the righteous. And in that process, they reached new heights. And that was part of their greatness, that yearning to do what was special. Okay.
Beautiful. Well said, Rabbi.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, Rabbi. So are we tentatively on for next week as well?
Same time.
All right, folks. So if you got questions for the Rabbi, write them down and bring them next week. We'll be doing more Working Together series with Rabbi Karmi Ingber next week, same time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now.
All the best. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks, bye.
We'll stop that recording